My name is Eric Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9 to 5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Welcome to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Eric Van Horn here with Krisstina Wise. Now, Krisstina is an amazing woman who I met with a mutual friend, Jeff Hayes, in Park City or Salt Lake City when I was out there recording documentary type deal. And we got to spend the evening together learning about each other's businesses, and over a nice glass of wine. Krisstina, I've been wanting to get you on the podcast. We've been trying forever. We're going to talk a lot of things about money today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And I think it was more than one glass of wine.
I think so. It was a late evening with a handful of us, and it was so fun. It was amazing. But that's where we got to know each other, and then we just connected after that because we just had to connect, because when you meet people that you know that you're like and you can help and they can help you, you always follow up. And that's what we did. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
The $1 million question. Well, one, we were both out at Jeff's place to be part of his Money Revealed and some of his Money Secrets documentaries, which was super fun. I put myself in the money category as an educator, a money educator, a wealth educator, to teach the mindset and the universal laws and principles behind money, but not just making it. Where I find that most of the attention is placed when it comes to money is how to build a bigger business. Should I buy a franchise? Should I own but should I be a franchisor? Should I be a franchisee? Should I start a business? What do I do to make a living? How do I increase my pay? How do I build a 7-figure launch? All these conversations and programs or masterminds or whatever the case is, it's all about making more money. And making money is great, but it's just one piece of the money puzzle. And what we don't talk about is what comes after making money. Because really the difference between making money and having money has to do with this one word. It's like, how do we know how to keep our money? And what does keeping mean? That even orients us around this conversation of how much money is enough. Because what happens, no matter when we get tied into being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, no matter how we do that, it very easily can become a grind. It can become feast or famine. It can be, we bought a business thinking we're buying leverage and freedom, when all we are is we're just tied more to our phones and to customers and complaints and late nights and not taking weekends or vacations, meaning we have lack of freedom versus more freedom. So that's what I do. My entire life has been teaching business and business concepts. I'm a business owner. I've had many multi-million-dollar businesses. I've had a few good exits, and just love playing in the business game and love teaching how to win the money game.
Let's pause where you were talking about so many entrepreneurs. Once you start making money, and even if you start keeping money, I see so many people, myself included, that want to keep going. They want to keep making more. And when I say myself included, I used to live where you live in Austin. It was too hot for me there. 100 days of 100-degree weather. I had to get out of there to get into the frozen world of South Dakota again. When I moved from Austin, I had some businesses and I was doing just fine with them. I was working the 4-hour work week. Tim Ferriss taught me the 4-hour work week. I'm like, I want to do that. So I got into business to do that. I achieved my goal. I was living a happy, healthy, satisfied life here. And then I started to just buy another business and expand more. And pretty soon I found myself just building empires and building bigger and bigger things. But then my time was getting taken away from me even more. I was working way less than most people work, but still I found myself working more. What quarantine has done for me is it made me realize I want to stop working less in a lot of these different things. And so I've taken complete inventory of my life to design my life again around my lifestyle. And so I've had to say no to so many things, so many good opportunities, so many potentially good opportunities but I'm like really satisfied with it. And I don't want to go back to that empire building, at least right now. I can't say what it'll be like in 4 years, but is that pretty common with what you see out there in entrepreneurs?
Yeah, well, and man, that's just such a big conversation. And it's really so much of the underpinning of what I teach when it comes to money is really getting in touch with that. Is that so much of what we're driven by is this need for external validation? Like, look at me, who am I? So when we're looking at the top line as bragging rights when it comes to business, like how many zero-figure business do I have? It's an ego. That's usually an ego conversation. So I can't tell you how many times I hear things like, oh, I have a six-figure business, seven-figure business, eight-figure business, 10-figure business. What I don't hear people saying is what numbers on their balance sheet. So I work with, privately, what I call high income broke people, meaning they're earning high incomes, but they don't have any money. What
Hmm.
that means is that ultimately they're living paycheck to paycheck. And 83% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, regardless of income.
Yeah,
So what
even
that
these
means,
high income
yes.
earners, there's having is what you're saying is they have an ego thing where it's about the gross or maybe even about the net, but their lifestyle matches it. Their balance sheet does not reflect what somebody with an income statement like that should actually be living.
Yeah, and there's the difference. Wealth, if you're into wealth, you know the difference between an income statement and a balance statement. And the income statement is just a means
Hmm.
to the balance sheet. So when there, that's how we know the conversation is radically different. Those of us that are in the accumulation game versus the business top line income ego game. And again, it's that when you're in the wealth game, you're concerned with top line because ultimately your bottom line in your business, which is your net, the higher that net is, the more money you get to play with to use to build your wealth. But ultimately, that's why you care about the top line or the bottom line in your business is the higher that is. One, I get to spend more on my lifestyle, which is nice. Why not? But also it's how much faster, how much bigger I can build my empire, my wealth, which is ultimately the passive income. On the franchisor side, what's really nice is something called royalties. And that's really what franchisors are after. Of course, there's the startup costs and different monies that come in, but
Hmm.
ultimately the franchise game on the or side is the royalty game. And that means that those royalties come in every single month is based usually on the top line of the franchisee. So you sell a lot of franchisees, you get those royalties, and that's kind of passive income ultimately once you've got the machine going and
Hmm.
you've got a good offer and you have people that are paying you. So that's nice. I mean, once you put in that effort up front, it pays you for a long time
It's
afterwards.
like an annuity stream. And the same thing. So take that franchisor thing, drop it down just one step to the master franchise or the area development or regional development, where this person goes in and buys a region, like what I did in Austin. I came into Austin when there were 4 Liberty Tax stores. I sold it when we had 42, and I got 50% of the royalties off of each of those 42 stores. It took a while in the beginning to build it up because I had to buy the thing. Then I had to spend time and money to grow the thing, but once that was happening, those royalties, I was getting 3.5% from every dollar that everybody in Austin that was paying a Liberty tax to do their tax return, I was getting, and I was coaching franchisees. So you're right. Once as a franchisor or an area developer, master franchise, whatever you want to call it, you are doing the front end work, but then you have just that income annuity royalty stream, which is great.
So the way to think of it is that I do a talk. It's called the most important money words that nobody ever talks about. So in one of those where people are focusing, let's say on these, hey, how to build an eight-figure business, take your business from 7 to 8 figures. Great. A lot of the people I found that teach those are on stages. They don't really have many zeros on the bottom line, but that's another conversation for another day. Because if you make $5 million from your business, but you keep 4,999 and you made a profit of $1, you just get big ego rights to say I have a $5 million business, but you didn't pay yourself a dime. So there can be a lot of illusion in that. I just say be careful in many of those cases. But regardless, the that's all about income. I like to focus more on the word called asset. So, what is an asset? Is an asset ultimately, let's say it can be one asset or it can be a collection of assets that we own one way or another that produces cash flow. So ultimately, what passive income is there's working income and there's non-working income. So when we're working for our income means we need to get up every single day and use our body and our
Hmm.
time to go make donuts. That's working income in any form or fashion. So even if we have a franchise or business, like whatever that is, but we have to operate that baby. We're in it every day. We take those calls at night. We're not really with our family on vacation. Even though we have royalties coming in, whatever the case is the business system. The royalties in that case, that's just income stream. It's
Hmm.
not passive income.
No.
It's just the revenue stream of how that business system generates revenue. Now, nice. It's nice when it's recurring revenue like that, as opposed to have to go out and sell the next widget, and the next widget, and the next widget. But ultimately, that's just how it's the business revenue model of that business. Now it's passive income only when it's an asset and you own the asset. It doesn't mean you are the asset. So it's only when we're an asset in our business and only when we can pull ourselves out of our business and that business pays us whether we're in it or not. Now that's an asset. Now that's passive income. Now I can sell that because I've got it
Hmm.
operational, that I can sell that asset to replace it, maybe buy other assets or reinvest that money. But even if you exit out of your business as an asset, you still have the next problem. Like, where do I put the next piece of money? And to create another asset or collection of assets. But ultimately, that's the goal. The goal is to build an asset that pays cash flow, meaning that pays you money that's passive, that gives you 100% of your time back, that you get to choose whatever you want to do with that time because the business doesn't own you. You own the business. So there's
How
two strategies for doing that.
how
Go
many
ahead.
hours? So let's just find that just a little bit more before we get into strategies. How many hours a week would you define that as an asset? The franchisees devoting how much time into that cash flowing asset? Is 5 hours a week, meaning it's more of that passive asset, or is it zero?
Yeah, I mean, it's even let's say if I have passive income from all my real estate holdings, and I mostly have them managed by other people. It's cash flow engine, it's passive. There's very few things that are 100% passive, meaning I still get calls occasionally. I
Yep.
need to go visit some properties. I'm making some decisions. I'm looking at taxes. So there may be some things like trust funds or some things that's
Mhm.
100%. But ultimately, it means, a few hours here and there because you still have to manage these assets one way or another. But ultimately,
The success or the failure of it isn't defined by or directly related to your time in the business.
right, exactly.
I've had those with Soul Salon Studios. We had 12 of those in Orange County. That was a passive investment for us because we would open them up and the partners wouldn't even know they were having a grand opening. We didn't even know leases are getting signed because we had someone that we trusted that was doing all that. So that was considered a passive business and a nice exit, by the way. 8 figure. We're talking about figures, 8 figure. But it is nice to have these exits along the way because it allows you to go and buy other passive income streams. And that's what I did when I had an exit there. And I say 8 figure exit, I'm joking. It's true. But at the same time, it was not high 8 figures and it was split 4 ways. And there's plenty of taxes. So make no mistake about it, I don't live in a mansion with servants over here in South Dakota. I'm a pretty simple man over here. But anyway, I took what I earned there and bought investments in hotels, investments in high-end apartments, and those types of investment vehicles. I'm looking at an investment in Dress Barn today. I'm looking, so they're going to do some online stuff, but that's passive. So I took what I earned there in a fairly passive income generating vehicle, took it into a super passive one, and into other kind of passive investment vehicles as well. So for everyone out there in the franchise world, I'm doing this in franchising, and there are many of you that are listening that are way beyond me doing this, but this is possible. So what we're talking about is the goal. I know people, Krisstina, that buy franchises. They're really into franchising and real estate. They buy franchises. They use their money that they generate in their franchises to buy apartments and storage units and things like that. So that's what we're talking about, isn't it?
That's what we're talking about. That's the wealth creation. It's whatever business model, in this case, it's franchising one way or another. Whatever the business model is the way we earn income. Then what we do with that income is the difference between income and being on that month to month hamster wheel for your
Hmm.
entire life because you spend everything you make are those that you use your income to build your empire, to build your balance sheet.
What
And there's
is
different
it?
strategies to do that.
Is
It's
it a
but
mindset thing for people that they don't that I mean, you go from making 50,000 a year to 100 to a million and they're still living that paycheck to paycheck? What's the thing in somebody that does not allow them to start putting that money into passive investment vehicles?
there's a few different things. One thing, there's this universal money law that's called Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law says that expenses will always rise to match income.
Hmm.
And what was once a luxury becomes a necessity.
Hmm.
So what that means is that if we don't understand that this is a law at work and we go in with this strategy alternative to the natural order of things, we're just going to wind up in this flow of the more money we make, the more money we spend. So that's that universal law at work. Now, what happens along with that is that as we raise income, we raise social status. So when we went from a Honda, maybe we had the nicest Honda in our social status. Now we get to go up to the BMW. Now from the BMW, we get to go up maybe to the highest version of Tesla. And so each thing is we get that little bit of feel good. We rise to next social
Hmm.
status. Now we're in the country club and we're playing golf and we have our cars and our house has to match. And it's not a good thing or bad thing. It's so natural, we don't even know it's happening. That's as Parkinson's law at work. But once we start going up in social status, nobody wants to go down again.
Hmm.
In the nature of even economies and everything, things vary. So when we're living at the top level of the social status to match the top level of our income, to feel included with everybody else in there, where it's a natural human thing to want to be included and to want to be liked. And so we're just in that force that with complete lack of awareness that that's happening. And we attach our personal value to that many times if we haven't done some of that work. So then that external gratification, that external fitting in, I have the watch that's like everybody else's watches. Again, there's such a human phenomenon that's invisible. And these universal principles at work, like Parkinson's law, that again, if we don't make choice, if we're not aware
Hmm.
that that's going to happen, and we don't make choices for that not to happen, we're just going to find ourselves in that soup, if you will, in that force of the energetic force.
By the way, franchisees out there, if you're wanting to tell everybody how many franchise licenses you own versus how many are open, that might be, related to this. None of this really matters. How do you know that you've arrived? How do you know if you are not participating in, we're just talking about keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like, how do you know when you're not participating in that?
Yeah, there's a couple different things. One is the concern, like what you're focused on, is less about income and more about wealth and knowing what that distinction is. And when that becomes the focus, it automatically focuses a different behavior or a different desire to learn a different behavior. So
Hmm.
if the focus is always income and more income, we live in this culture of more is better.
Yep.
And in this social thing, no matter where we are on that chart, there's always the next place to go. There's always someone doing better than we are.
Always.
If we're a seven-figure business, then there's the next person in the eight-figure. So if we're going to be measure up and be good enough, according to some of the friends, we're now have to be an eight-figure. Now it's so. Do you see? There's no end to
Hmm.
that, and that's just part of it. More is better. More is better. And
Yep.
then we're not paying attention because there's that natural competition that's in there as well, and the measuring up. So again, that is so deep within our psychology and our sociology and everything, that unless we pull ourselves completely out of that and realize that that's not the game where we're going to win. In fact, it's the losing game, and it's the churn game, and it's the hustle game, and it's what I call when I get there game. That
Yep.
when I get there, then things will be better. When I have the eight figure, then I'll take more time. Then I'll do this. Then I'll but we get stuck in that there game also. And it's the more, it's the there, it's just all these different principles that are working against us if we're just not aware that they're happening.
it's the income versus wealth. And let's get into the wealth creation and keeping your wealth, because if you're making $1 million a year in your lifestyle, you're always buying the stuff and you don't have anything left over to do big investments, then you're probably living in that keeping up with the Joneses world. One of the things that helped me is I had to put away a significant sum of money, and I did it about 3 years ago, into a pension plan. And I was forced to make a decision to put X amount of money every year for the next, I think it had to be at least 3 to 4 years of a similar amount, give or take 10 to 20%. And it was a significant amount for me, which is might be insignificant for others or significant, doesn't matter. It was a big thing for me that I knew that I couldn't touch it and I needed to earn it and put it away. But that's one of the things that helped me start putting significant amounts of money away to make sure I'm living off of, much less than I could be living off of. Another thing, here's something that you may not have thought about. Just move to the sticks somewhere. There's no keeping up with the Joneses when you're out in the sticks, like me in South Dakota. And I say that because I have friends out here that are extremely wealthy, very, very wealthy. Nobody knows really how wealthy they are, and they don't have a need to flaunt it because no one's going to care when you're in Spearfish, South Dakota, how wealthy you are. So that's one of the things that I've noticed, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for people that are playing the wealth game versus the income game. So I love this conversation. Keep going on the wealth thing.
Well, and on that note, those that are playing the wealth game, they're pretty quiet about it because it's only the income game that's loud. Like seriously. And those playing the wealth game, it's kind of it's a private little secret that we're like, ha ha ha, if anybody only knew type of thing. Like, oh my God,
Yep.
look, they're all the kids fighting over X, Y, or Z, and you're over here just enjoying your caviar and nobody knows and you're having a really good life. So yeah, the point that you make there, well, let me back up a little bit, is there's really two type of business strategies. Lots of different models, but two different business strategies. And so one business strategy is where you build the business as an asset, and it's an asset to be sold. So in your case, you've done an extraordinary job of building assets. So the way to build an asset, for the most part, it's not a sellable asset if you're the number one asset in the asset. That means you're building a business system, it's working, it's profitable, it's sustainable, and it's something that a business owner wants to buy for obvious reasons. And they don't want to buy you, they want to buy the profit, they want to buy the system. They want to, that's what they're buying. So those then going into it, it's like I'm building this master franchisor, I'm doing this, I want it to be sellable. I want to build it, maybe a $10 million business, and I need to pull myself out of it. And so, but you go in with that strategy of I'm building an asset to sell. That's what an exit strategy is. The first type of exit strategy is you build your business. Now, the question is let's say you made $5 million on that sale. Now, what many times, even those that are a little bit that what I call get lucky with an exit, then they go take that $5 million and maybe they sink it all in the next business. And many times they're not as lucky in the second business and that money just disappears. So that happens a lot. Now, what you did, for example, Eric, that it's like, okay, let's pretend it was $5 million. It's like, okay, I might take a chunk of this to reinvest in next business, yada, yada. But now I'm going to go buy other assets to build out a portfolio that I'm just basically moving money from one asset to a collection of assets. And I like collection of assets because that's called diversification. And it's leveraging the different assets where all of your eggs aren't in one business basket asset. But that's still one thing is it's like, okay, I'm going to exit there and then reinvest that money and then that money to reinvest that money. And that's the wealth building game. If you're buying and selling assets over time, you're not just focusing on making more money over time. It's categorically different way of going about your money. Now, the second type of exit strategy, business strategy, exit strategy as a family, let's say, for example, is your business. So the business strategy is an asset strategy. The second strategy is what I call an income strategy. meaning it's the business is to generate high income, and income meaning profit. So it's likely never to be sellable, because maybe in this case, if I am the fundamental asset in my business, it's not going to be a sellable asset, but it's a high lifestyle business, this cash flow business, where if I can make $1 million a year cash flow and still manage my time effectively, where it's not owning me, the way I could do it, that exit strategy, is if I know my number, my lifestyle number is if I can generate $1 million profit in my business, I pay my taxes on that, and that's enough to cover the cost of my lifestyle. Now, what the differential is that my exit strategy, it's called what I call reverse engineering. You ask your question is, how much money is enough
Hmm.
on the asset valuation side? Let's say a $10 million asset value is worth $250,000 cash flow, pulling out 4 to 5%. That means my exit strategy is to build a portfolio of a $10 million and build it over time for that 250, as opposed to maybe I just build a $10 million business, sell it for $10 million, then I'd have to reinvest that $10 million for the
Hmm.
same $250,000 cash out. So ultimately, we're getting the same place. One is just build the asset valuation, meaning the business, to $10 million. The other one is to skim a certain amount, like 20, 30, 40% off the top for the cash from the $1 million that I make off that business over time, invest that. And that same 10-year period that it might take to build a $10 million business, I've made a $10 million asset portfolio.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, at $10 million, we're both in the same place. So my exit strategy has been more or less high cash flow businesses. I invest based on a 30 or 40% off the top. I live up what's left over. I build my portfolio. I have leveraged that. And then I have lots of different types of passive incomes, and I flip assets inside that portfolio. So I'm always playing two games like you are. I'm
Hmm.
playing the income game through wanting to be a good business owner, maximizing profitability, the sustainability of that, the predictability of that income through my wealthy business, for example. So that's one game I'm playing. That's the business game of income. So I want that $1 million profit that I can then take out of my business and put in my household. Now I can invest a good chunk, 30, 40% of that. Now I put that back, I invest that in my balance sheet and my asset portfolio. And now I manage that. So now I'm managed on those real estate assets. I'm managing the other assets are in there. I'm selling some, I'm buying some. So there's three businesses at play here. So a wealth person that's a business owner, they're in the business game of making money. They're in the business game of building wealth. And what that game is, it means you have a business that you're building as an asset or just cash flow. You're using your household, the way you run money through your household, as a business with the same business thinking to take money to invest and live off the difference. So your household is a business, and how you cash flow and run that, and how you get rich is you spend less money than you make. I mean, that's rocket science. And then the third business is on the balance sheet side, is the asset side, is what you're doing with your assets to manage those. Because how you build wealth quickly versus waiting 40 years, which would be traditionally putting the market at 88%,
Hmm.
assuming you could get that average, that would take you 40 years. If you want to cut that down in time, now you're managing assets and flipping those. And that's what you've done. You build wealth that way. It's like, oh, I made money here. I'm doing this. I'm buying these assets. I'm going to sell a few things here, buy that. So you're always in the wealth building game. That's an asset game, an income game, a business game, a household lifestyle game. And you're playing all these at the same time.
So franchisees, start doing this early before you are even at the point where you are exceeding your lifestyle goals. Like, start planning this, start learning this stuff now. If you're not at the point where you are at your lifestyle income goals, it takes time and it takes knowledge to be able to do this. At least for me, I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I didn't want to put the time in to understand what I didn't know. It wasn't until that I did that, and then I started to understand how when you start playing the wealth game, your income, you're putting it into different investment vehicles, whether it's businesses, real estate, pensions, all kinds of different things. It all depends on you, your situation, how much money you're going to make, for how long you're going to make it. And then you can, as your income comes out of your business, into the other entry, whether it's personal or another investment vehicle, that's when you can save massive amounts in taxes and you are putting that money to work for you. So then once you start playing that game, at least for me, I started to really enjoy not buying toys, not buying stuff. And I have plenty of toys, right? But I enjoy putting those into assets that are producing both short term and long term income. And it feels good just being disciplined to do that because it does take discipline because it's easy to spend it.
It's easy to spend it. And so, just a little recommendation is have your asset income buy the toys, not your working income buy the toys. So that way you're going to push it out. If you want to buy the boat to be able to do the trout fishing or whatever you're going to do, buy the first piece of real estate with the cash flow that will pay the boat payment. Don't use your working income to rob yourself of that ability to invest. So that same amount that you pay in the boat payment, instead put that into buying an asset, even to be able to buy a piece of real estate. Then once you get that real estate cash flow, now buy that to spend to pay the boat payment. So that way you're not foregoing asset creation for the sake of toys. You can have the toys by
Yep.
not sacrificing assets.
That's a fun game to play too, because you really start to understand the value of buying a piece of real estate or whatever it is. And you realize like, wow, I can really, and Robert Kiyosaki talked about that years ago, right? I think it was him like,
Mhm.
your house is not your asset, buy assets to pay for your liabilities. And that's what we're talking about here. And I've always thought that I don't always do it because sometimes it's not the smartest financial move, but I bought a fishing boat. I bought a really, really, really nice fishing boat. Again, nice for South Dakota, not nice for other areas like Austin, but I paid cash for it because I wanted to feel the pain for it. But what would have been a better financial move is to buy an asset to be able to pay for that boat.
There's no right or wrong. So when we reverse engineer into the numbers, what I recommend people to know, I do a course, it's called Know Your Numbers.
Tell me
And
about it.
so know your numbers is the first question to ask is how much money is enough? And if you don't know that number, the only answer is more. So when we know how much money is enough and we can work backwards from that number, it's really easy to even determine how much money to make in our business.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, let's say if we've done the numbers, I can say, hey, Krisstina Wise in Austin, Texas can easily live her lifestyle without feeling like I'm giving anything up for $250,000 a year. So if I multiply that 20 by 20, that's $5 million. So what that means is by the 4% rule, it's like 4 to 5%. What you multiply whatever your lifestyle number is, say my lifestyle, that's the cost of my lifestyle is $250,000. What that means then is I need $5 million of asset values to pull out at 5% that's going to still pay me that $250,000. So now I have two numbers. I know I've already determined that I can be just fine happy on $250,000. So now now I have to have a plan to be able to build the 5 million, let's say on the asset side for the passive income that my assets will pay me that 250. So now I can reverse engineer from there and determine how much money do I need to put away every single month for some simple calculations to be able to build a $5 million asset value over 10 years, if that's my number, over 20 years. So now let's just pretend it's $5,000 a month. I need to do a calculator.
We'll just pretend
But we'll
that's the
pretend.
real, yeah.
We'll just pretend. But let's say we put that in a compounding calculator, just Google and compounding calculator. And let's just pretend that if I put $5,000 away for 20 years at a 10% that I think I can get in the market by doing these different things, my investments, that after 20 years, that's going to equal $5 million. So what that means is that I need to $250,000, let's see, $250,000 divided by 12. That's $20,000 a month, basically, minus, let's say, $5,000 a month. That means I get to spend $15,000. I need to put $5,000 away. But what that means is I need to earn $20,000 a month to be able to live my lifestyle and to be able to put enough away to hit that 20-year $250,000 game, because I want to live off 250 today and live off
Hmm.
250 tomorrow. No one's going to go down lifestyle. So now I can create a business strategy. My business strategy is if I hit 20 grand a month, I don't have to worry about 100 grand a month or whatever profit. All I have to do is worry 20. If I blow it above 20, great. But if I can make and sustainably over 20 years, not have a month less than $20,000 profit, and let's say after taxes, and I pay myself and have enough to live my lifestyle today and take off that chunk of $5,000 every single month, invest that over time. And then 20 years later, that's my freedom number, my freedom day, because now my asset value is going to pay me the 250 and I have all my time back. But we reverse engineer into the number by knowing what does it cost to live my lifestyle? This is the lifestyle I want. It doesn't have to be yachts and caviar, but it doesn't have to be ramen noodles either. It can be a nice lifestyle. To your point, maybe if I'm working all this, it's like, in Austin, Texas, it might be a little too expensive. But if I move to South Dakota, we could do this easy peasy, or we can do it in half the time of
Yep.
living in LA or
Yep.
something. So now we can make lifestyle choices just where we choose to live to hit these numbers. But when we know the numbers, we can make these adult decisions and choices. And then it just becomes the play and the fun of it, because we know the numbers we have to work towards and what we're in and how much money to make in our business. And then it might take a lot of pressure off if we're out of the more game and saying, all I have to do is profit $20,000 from my business to hit this numbers. Well, that's easy. Why am I stressing myself out and not seeing my family and not taking vacations because I think I have to hit that $100,000 a month just to measure up? It's like, screw that. I'm fine. I'm fine with this. Or maybe it's like, but we all get to choose our number too. So where 20,000 a month might be good for one person, it might not be enough for somebody else. And that's okay too. But when you know your numbers, it just takes away the stress. Now we can go buy our franchise and we can do this and we can hit the numbers and find one that really matches into the lifestyle, that fits into our financial lifestyle and what we love. And then it's just business. And the rest of it's the game of money. And it's super fun.
When you're in the game and you're doing well in the game, this is a lot of fun to do this. Like, I love this stuff now. When I was in the grind, I hated it because I just wanted to bury my head in the sand. I'm just like, I'm just in the grinding mode. But I think even if you're in the grinding mode, start thinking about stuff like this, because you're going to get there sooner, right? If you start thinking about, the sooner that you can start thinking about this, the sooner you find your number and then start backing into that, the sooner you're going to be able to actually start doing that. And then it becomes a lot of fun, and it is a game. And I've seen friends of mine that they were in the business and doing really well in the business. And all of a sudden something shifted. And then they go from the income game to the wealth game. And it wasn't about growing bigger business. I'm thinking of two friends in particular right now that are very well-known online guys. And now they're in the wealth game, and they're playing a different game. And it's fun to watch them because it went from, their numbers went from how many millions can I make to how can I make a million without doing anything, like absolutely nothing. And once you kind of shift with that, the game gets to be real fun. So how can people find you? How can people follow you?
Oh, the easiest way is I have a podcast myself. It's called Wealthy Wealthy. And then just easiest thing is to Google me, Krisstina.com, which is a K and two S's, KRISSTINA.com. And then, I do consultations, I do calls, I have programs, courses, all sorts of different things, but just here to help.
So check it out. You're going to hear me on that podcast one of these days, whenever it airs. But you've had some cool people, really cool people on that podcast. And then you've had people like me on it as well. But a great podcast. Everyone should check that out. Any last bits of wisdom for the audience here?
My parting wisdom is get whole with your money, get good with your money, want to get good with it, want to learn it. We're in a relationship to it and with it. And we're not just about making it, we're really about growing it and building it. And even the legacy piece is that money can be a legacy that we leave our children, different things. So when we can get a really tight, close, intimate relationship that's on the balance sheet side and we're out of this competition on the income game, it really changes everything. Life is so much easier. And when you know your numbers, you build what I call financial sovereignty and financial security. that undercurrent of financial anxiety that's usually present for almost everyone, it just disappears. And it's a whole different way to live life when you can just wake up happy. It's like, all right, game on. What are we doing today without that churn, that grind, that undercurrent of, yeah, just anxiety, fear.
So good. I'm going to say one thing, franchisees. I started a franchisee mastermind, $147 a month. At least right now it is. It'll probably go up at some point, but you can check it out if you're a franchisee. You want to grow and scale your business, be around really smart, top performing franchisees in other industries. Check out franchiseemastermind.com and see if it's something you're interested in. Krisstina, thanks so much for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.